Hello and welcome to Craft of the Draft. Massive episode coming up for you. We have our top 30 prospect power rankings for July are in. Plenty of the latest champs action, weekend highlights, our AFL club by club series, and you also had a recent chat about all the latest for WA draft prospects.
Yeah, worthwhile going and checking that one out. Jacob Farrow has been the big riser. He's from Western Australia. We talked extensively about him. Fred Rodriguez, Sam Swadling, Blake Kelly, Will York. There's so much talent coming out of that part of the world this year. So yeah, really enjoyed that chat.
If you want your normal AFL footy chat, you can head over to the Hit Out on Zero Hangers YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe. We now have 30 names in our power rankings. We're up to July. Got our July edition. You can catch the full wrap up of that on zerohanger.com. There's been plenty of movement. Obviously, we've seen SA who have won the champs. They're full carnival. All 4 games done, undefeated. So that's obviously had a big part to play in these rankings. We have got Vic Metro to have a few games to go. Vic Country and WA and the Allies also needing to finish theirs. The top 5, the top 4 stayed the same, as you can see there. And then you've got Ollie Greaves has popped up a spot. Josh Lindsay's gone down a spot. Zeke Ewell has managed to stay the same at 7th overall. And here's a few that aren't playing at the moment. Liam Heatherton's another one who's dropped off because of his absence. And obviously Ewell had a few runs on the board. But as you can see with probably the top 10, only half of them have moved spots, and it's been pretty rock solid.
Yeah, it has been. It was really difficult to do these rankings, and probably just a qualifying statement to say that, yeah, clearly South Australia have played all 4 games of the National Championships, and Vic Metro have just played the 1 to this point. So this is probably not a rankings that we expect to stay uniform, or we expect to stay similar as the year progresses and as the players from Victoria in particular get a chance to impress. But as we sit here in July, clearly there is a South Australian slant as you do go down the rankings, and it is really, really tight. Like, as you can see on your screen, there will be some players who have dropped some spots, some significant spots as well. But part of that is just down to the fact that perhaps they've been playing some APS footy and haven't been able to show what they can do on the big stage. So it's a really tough one to do at this point of the year. But nonetheless, still some talking points and some players who have rightly got themselves into first round contention, as is reflected by how far they've leapt, or some of them leaping from outside the 25 last month into the 30.
So from that 25, as you said, we've added 5 more, but a total of 7 new prospects in these rankings, and a few of them are from SA. The highest that's come from outside of the rankings into the rankings is Aidan Schubert, who had an absolutely fantastic carnival for South Australia, kicked 10 goals in all 4 games. But it wasn't just his efforts in the front third, it was his ability and his work rate to get up the ground, help in the ruck, and get plenty of hands on the ball, dominate in the air. And you've got him at 13th after a huge month.
Yeah, spot on. It was just the fact that he could do so much as a key forward for South Australia. And I think if you're a recruiter and you're looking at what he did, he showed he could kick goals. He showed he could take contested marks. As a second ruck option, he was really, really competitive going up against some highly regarded opponents. And in that last game, Tyron Armu, who has the strength advantage on him, but it was still a really good matchup when they were in there against each other. So I think what was so impressive was just that we saw so much from him. And as an athletic type as well, I think you've got plenty to work with if you're a club looking to add to your key forward stocks. And I think he was pretty unlucky not to win South Australia's MVP off the back of that, because he did something and contributed in some way. In all 4 games, 17 disposals, that's a lot for a key forward to be averaging across the championships.
Yeah, so in these power rankings, he's the second. And as we discussed last week, you were pretty firm on having Archie Ludovic as your number 1 key forward, who isn't tied to a club, but that's pretty much the case for just about most key forwards in this draft. So Ludovic at 10, Schubert at 13. I want to go down a couple spots. So behind Schubert, we have Adam Sullen coming, and at 15, Lockie Doverston, plus 6. So like we've said, Vic Metro have only had the 1 game, and he was, like his team, wasn't able to have the impact that we've seen at other levels. But since going back to the CTL, he has been on fire and one of the form small forwards in this draft class.
Yeah, from the Rowville Sports Academy, they produced talent so comfortably last year. Cooper Hines the year before, it was Nick Watson, and they've got so many on Coach Talent League lists. But yeah, he was starved of opportunity in that Vic Metro game. But yeah, bags of 4 and 5 across the last month really highlight what he's able to do. You just know what you're going to get from him as a small forward at the Eastern Rangers. He's good at ground level. He's able to find the goals, and his pressure is really, really high as well. That's been a big improvement this year.
So he's at 15, right after him, Dyson Sharp at 16. So South Australia's MVP, a big performer for South Australia in this carnival, and obviously a player that we've spoken about at some length this year about how hard it is to gauge where he might sit as a from just a talent point of view this year, and how well high up he would be, but from a focus in a bigger scheme of things and how clubs might look at him, how he might use, and what we wanted to see from the carnival. You've got him at 16, dropping a further 6 spots.
Yeah, I do. And I wouldn't begrudge anyone having him in the top 10, even pushing a little bit higher than that, because I can understand those arguments. He's so clean. He's clinical around stoppage. He was arguably best on ground in their 2 middle games, the 2 games that they absolutely smashed their opponents. He was the one that you can argue led them to victory. But for me, there was probably spasmodic glimpses that his ball use was a little bit cleaner, but I do still think he leans too heavily on that inside game. And those inside balls, you look at players like Tom Mitchell are getting eased out the lineup. I'm not comparing Dyson Sharp to a Tom Mitchell, but yeah, you certainly need to have a little bit more of that balance. I think someone like an Ed Richards at the Western Bulldogs is more of that modern day midfielder, and I do question whether he's got the skill set where a club would be comfortable taking him as a top 10 prospect.
So what we saw at the Champs this year for Dyson Sharp, like he ticked a lot of boxes, and probably the ones that we thought he would. Yeah, I think what might be
and leadership. He's ticked that as well.
Too. What might be the most important part of his draft year is probably what's to come. Yeah, he might have a very good run at senior sample level with Central Districts as he did last year. You got a few games in, come finals, which is a nice kind of stage for a bottom age to be playing. Yeah, and now for a talent who's probably top 5 ready-made, if not probably number 1 ready-made talent in this draft class. He could really strengthen his stocks further and move back into that top 5 range if he has and shows the ability that we think he can have at a senior level. So if he gets a good enough amount of games with Central Districts in the sample season at senior level, that might be the more important part of his draft year and showing what he can do at that level, when we kind of know what he can do, but just proving that and showing AFL clubs that he'll be an asset ready to go next year. Just rolling through a few more. So Louis Emmett at 17, Cody Curtin at 18, a bit of a drop off there from him. I know Hibbins-Hargreaves come up a few spots, had a quieter game on the weekend, kicked a nice goal to just remind some that, and as we spoke about last week, isn't the most consistent player, but he'll remind you of what he's capable of and his upside. Liam Heatherton, who's obviously currently injured at the moment, has dropped off a few places.
He will be a bargain wherever he goes, Liam Heatherton.
Harry Dean, 21. So this is one for Blues fans. One we've spoken about a little bit in the last few weeks with his form for the Murray Bushrangers and coming in for Vic Country as well as perhaps the best key defender in this draft class. 21 overall is quite nice. Obviously, when we spoke about the Blues a couple of weeks ago, we made note that they probably just need him to be a bit later. I'll still have to be pretty busy in the trade period to get some extra picks in, but 21's probably a nice position for him.
Yeah, it is. It pained me so much to leave him out last month, so I had to put him in this month because his form continued to shine. It was quite good in Vic Country's second game. Did concede a couple of goals to Mitch Marsh, but still showed he was able to do. And like you said, the best key defender in a draft class that doesn't have many key defenders. He's really quick. He's good overhead as well, and quite assured with ball in hand. So yeah, Blues fans, you'll have a player to help out Jacob Wiedering and co in the coming years. Yeah.
As for Collingwood as well, we've got Tom McGawan at 22, dropped back 3 spots, but he's one of those Vic Metro players who still has 3 games or a maximum of 3 games to play in this carnival. Mitch Marsh at 23. Now I think a few people might be like, oh, look at his carnival, 12 goals over those 4 games, 5 to finish off his champs. 23 might seem further back than some might think. Well, why do you have him there?
191 centimeters. So third tall forwards. I think with those top 20 selections, you tend to take your midfielders and your key forwards, your 195 plus forwards. We did an episode earlier in the year about how tall forwards are getting taller and taller. Now, Mitch Marsh clearly has a skill set that's going to translate to the next level because he is good enough at ground level. He has got enough athletic assets to be really potent at AFL level. But as that third tall forward, you do tend to have a lot of options for that position as draft night 1 and 2 wear on. So I have just kept him back a little bit. But yeah, no doubt he showed that despite being that third tall forward, he's got the perfect skill set for it. And yeah, on form alone, you could certainly put him a fair bit higher than 23. But yeah, one of 7 new additions.
Yeah, you look at a player like Jack Gunston, who I think low 190s, certainly is thriving at the moment as maybe that spearhead option, despite his height. But yeah, the role he was able to play when you've got Lance Franklin and Jared Rufford. Not to say that Mitch Marsh might join a forward line of that ilk, but certainly that type of role, like you said, you might not want him as your number 1 forward, but a supporting third tall is certainly a good option for him. 25 and 26. What number are they? 24 and 25 for South Australia. The Faux Bros, Matt Leray at 25, Harley Barker at 26. Some of the more consistent performers are often among South Australia's best over the carnival, and a big reason why they went undefeated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've written a story on the main takeouts of South Australia's carnival. So that's up at Zero Hanger if you want to check it out. The one question that I have, and reason that maybe they're a touch further back than I would like to have put them, is that in the last 2 drafts, the only specialist winger to go in the top 20 is Caleb Windsor. So as a club, take a winger with a top 20 selection? I'm not sure. In a shallow talent pool, is their class and skill set too compelling to overlook? Perhaps it is. But yeah, they're clearly the 2 standout wingers of the draft, and performed in every game and had basically identical stats lines when you look at their averages as well, and really impact with ball in hand.
Tom Burton back to 27, so he's one of the ones that kind of made way for these extra 5 names coming in. Xavier Taylor, Eastern Rangers defender, at 28. One I'm sure you're pretty happy to have in.
Yeah, about time we got him in. I've basically, I think, got on the bandwagon quite early and labelled myself a big fan of his, and then haven't been able to fit him into the rankings. I think a little bit similar to Mitch Marsh, though. It's just that in-between height where you sort of go, he's not a key position player and he's never going to be a midfielder. So as a sort of rebounding, intercepting defender, where do they tend to land? And it is usually later in the first round, early in the second round. But yeah, he's going to be really hard to overlook because of that speed and because of that athleticism. And yeah, we know he can play on talls and smalls. He can play taller than he is, but he can also go with the small forwards and shut down some live eyes as well.
A couple of club-tied prospects to round out the 30. So Hassan Al-Ashkar at 29, Toby Wan at 30. Before we move on, who were the ones just sitting outside this top 30?
Yep. Taj Murray, he missed the game as a laid out with illness, but yeah, the first game was unbelievable. He has traits that suggest he will go quite highly. Zach McCarthy as well. Zach McCarthy, Noah Chamberlain, Toby Wan, the 3 that I felt really bad for dropping as far as they did. But yeah, like you said, had to accommodate some of those South Australian performers, Rory Wright, and then Louis Callaway, the Richmond father-son prospect. And yeah, head to that story if you want to read what his Sturt coach had to say about him earlier in the year.
Cool. There's your top 30 for July. We come back in August for our next set of draft prospect rankings. Let's actually talk some of the champs footy on the weekend. You and I were there at Marvel Stadium for the doubleheader. SA clinching the title, going 4 and zip. Obviously the first club to play all 4 games, and they did so almost perfectly. I think they were averaging over 90 points a game, won just about every game with some comfort as well. And a big tick for them was probably the nice spread of performers they had.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really impressive 4th game in particular. I think I could have done a top 5. Someone else could have done a top 5, and we could have had 10 different players in there. That was the quality that they had. Probably the one that would have been overlapping was Mitch Marsh, who had kicked the 5 goals, and really impressive from him in that, yes, he was their leading goal kicker for the carnival, but his 2 biggest bags, his 2 best performances came in the tight games, in the close contests. And then, it was a little bit quieter in those bloodbaths and let some others shine. But yeah, he was one that, again, put his name forward. The wingers continues to impress. Jet Darlitz was one I really liked in the back line. Yeah, he is one they look to get the ball in his hands because he uses it really well. Luke Candy's probably played that role across the first few games. But certainly Sunday was Jet Darlitz's time to shine in that position. Yeah,
there's another defender we'll talk about in that second game between WA and the Allies. But I love Darlitz, good ball use. Just a nice zip outside of out of the defensive 50. So probably his best game for the champs. But he did steadily build into that. It wasn't just a one-off performance, I don't think, either. There were, as we saw, Dustin Sharp was again comfortable. Lorraine Barker, solid. Schubert and Marsh big up front as well. Louis Callaway solid as well. Blake Threadgold came in and I thought he had some good moments for that first game he had. So there was, again, just a nice spread. Sam Cumming was one that really caught your eye, wasn't he?
Sam Cumming caught my eye. Yeah, I thought he was really good. And I think across the championships, he's proven that he can be that midfielder forward. We knew he had the runs on the board as a midfielder. But yeah, now as a forward, I think, we know he's a potent threat there as well. From a Vic Country side of things, Hugo Mukunda.
Yeah.
He was outstanding. He had 11 score involvements from his 17 disposals. And yeah, he was really, really good connecting forward of centre, kicked a goal of his own. But he's one that, people around him and people at the Geelong Falcons have said he's going to explode at some point this year. He's got the attributes as that forward midfielder. Had an injury interrupted start to the season and showed on the weekend why there has been so much hype around him.
Yeah, it seemed like everything went through him.
Yep.
Even though he was playing that kind of wider role, like you said, 11 score involvements from what their country had 17 scores all up. So, that's almost 2/3 or just about 2/3 of their scores he was a part of. Plenty of marks, got some intercepts, 427 meters gained. So that's a really nice performance that hopefully he can match for the finale in his carnival.
Yep.
Zach Harding strong in the ruck. I think this ruck battle is always going to be interesting with Ainsworth.
Yeah.
Versus Harding. It looks like Harding probably got the ledger there. With a nice goal as well to come with that. Anyone else from Vic Country you kind of keen to give a shout out to?
Yeah, Brady Atkins would be the other one. He was an inclusion from outside the squad for the match alongside JD Valet, who played off half forward from the Dandenong Stingrays. But Brady Atkins was one that I think did what everyone from Gippsland and everyone in his camp sort of expected that he would do if he was given the opportunity. And that was just a workmanlike performance.
Yep.
I think he had 4 or 5 tackles. He got a fair bit of the pill as well, and distributed really well. Probably in another draft year, that skill set would be complementing hopefully a better quality midfield, but maybe they don't have the same quality in there this year, but still his work was probably therefore made all the more important.
Yeah, and just 2 more, some of the standouts and biggest names in Vic Country's squad. Josh Lindsay, Willem Dersma, rock solid again in defence, good ball use, bringing it up, just penetrating kicks that were hitting targets. Dersma, really important in the air.
Yeah, he was.
For a lot of the for SA attacks. Into the second game, what a thriller it was, coming down to the final couple of minutes. And Max King's set shot, winning it for the Allies. Should probably mention Dylan Patterson's efforts to win the ball.
2 bounces and then composes himself
in his defensive half, run zigzag past a couple of opponents and then hit up Max King on the lead. Certainly a highlight in his carnival so far. I do actually want to start with a player in the losing side for WA who I thought was best on, Jacob Farrow. Absolutely fantastic game for him, who has been one of the more important contributors for WA's carnival to date, and he really just had that rubber stamp as a bona fide prospect this year. About 250 more meters gained than any other player, and still used the ball at about 90% efficiency.
Yep.
It was just damaging on both ends, as both an interceptor and a slingshot option out of defense as well.
I think that was what was so impressive for me, was it felt like, as a player who ran through the midfield, he seemed to intercept so well and get so many of his possessions in that way. He reads the game so well, and he's such an offensive threat. Another player who I thought, I wouldn't say rivaled him for best on ground, but I thought he was sort of half a tier below, but certainly one of their better players, Dale Sutherland, in the back line. There was a really important intercept mark that he took that looked like was going to save the game for WA. Obviously, like you said, Max King kicked that winning goal. But he's been a really important figure down there in the back line for Western Australia, and I've really enjoyed what he has produced across the carnival. But they were probably the 2 major standouts from a West Australian perspective for mine.
Yeah, Sam Swadling, good as well. For a player who just wanted to see clean ball use, and he went over 90%, which is good for him. 20 plus disposals and a goal. So, he's building a pretty nice case. For the Allies, Dan Annable, big tick again for him. Lockie Carmichael, Kobe Coulson. That's probably similar to how SA have gone about their business. It was probably a nicer spread than a standout for the Allies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 2 that I really want to highlight are a couple of key defenders, club-tied key defenders, but Caleb Nankaro and Jim Houston. So, like we said, there aren't too many in this draft class. Jim Houston's game I absolutely loved. I thought he was one of the Allies' best, did a really good job on Cody Curtin, shut him down, took some intercept marks. His defensive acts and spoils really, really impressive as well at 198 centimetres. He's going to be a player that I think comes into calculations. We'll talk about GWS's draft plans a little bit later, who he's tied to. But yeah, if not for them, then someone else might put a bid on him. And Caleb Nankaro as that athletic defender behind the footy, his run and carry and ball use, thought in the first game was quite strong, and he backed it up.
Yep. And Dylan Patterson up and down, but mostly up for him on the day. So that was quite promising for him. 2 more games coming up this weekend, both on Saturday and Sunday. So Icon Park, Allies hosting Vic Country.
Yep.
Obviously 2 teams that played over the weekend. One side coming off a win and one side coming off a loss. Where do you want to start with this game? What's the kind of... what do you think the biggest talking point is heading into it?
Between Vic Country and the Allies, I think, how Country stopped that rampant midfield is a big thing for mine. We know that the Allies have got Dan Annable and Kobe Coulson, as you talked about, as the two. They've become the 2 bona fide stars in there. I think Bo Adensel is going to miss the championships with a hamstring injury, so that puts more importance on probably that pair in particular. But Lucas Wooten showed some signs in there as well. And yeah, that's where it is always won and lost. But that's clearly where I see a class gap between the 2 sides. So it'll be interesting to see how Country go about trying to stop it, particularly with Willem Dersma not playing a primary midfield role so far in these championships. Yeah,
I think I'd probably sway towards Allies in this one as well. But like you said, I think midfield is going to be a really key component to this.
Yeah.
Like Dersma could have a pretty good game. I think the Allies forwards have been... They probably play a little bit smaller, so it's a good chance for him to play as that more demanding key position talent. Taj Murray back for this game, you'd think, with given it was just illness. So there's going to be a little bit of boost for the Allies in that regard, depending on how he gets used, along with Kalani White as well. So there's going to be a few moving pieces for this game and how it unfolds. But I think it'll be a close one, but probably just swaying towards the Allies.
Yeah, I think if Vic Country were to win, they'd need all the pieces to sort of fall into place. Noah Hibbins-Hargreaves, Willem Dersma, Josh Lindsay, Jesse Mallor to all stand up. Jesse Mallor actually reasonably good on the weekend as well, kicked the 3 goals. But then the other games, Vic Metro and WA, and I think there's clearly pressure on both teams coming into this one. It's WA's last game of the championships. Usually I think WA, if they were to finish championships 2-2, as they'll do if they beat Vic Metro, you'd say it's a pass mark. But if they finish it 2-2 this time round with the strength of talent that they believed they had coming into the champs, it's probably just satisfactory rather than a pass. So they do need to at least get to 2-2, they would believe. And Vic Metro, well, if they fall to 0-2, then that's a very uncharacteristic position for them to be in. So we know it's obviously all about development, but both teams will be hungry to get a victory on the board.
Obviously it's been not a while, but it feels like it's been a while since the Vic Metro's opener, which was a pretty poor disappointing performance against SA, who have chosen to who have emerged as the standout in this year's carnival. So you look at how every other side's fared against them, and you can think, well, maybe it's a level playing field outside of South Australia, and this is the chance for Vic Metro to bounce back. As we've mentioned with Lockie Doverston and a few others, they've found some good form back at Coates Talent League level, and hopefully they can transition that back into the national championships. You think the midfield's probably going to be an interesting area for Metro, and how they kind of get the most out of their injury room. And we know they bat deep, but I guess the options, and Ollie Greaves has been one of those players who's been really good at the Talent League and was probably one of their best in their opener, but it's maybe the support around him.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. So the 2 co-captains for Vic Metro ran through the midfield in the first game. I'm pretty sure that was the starting setup, was Ollie Greaves with Tom Burton and Sam Grill. Sam Grill looked okay and got his hands on the ball, but I felt like just a knee-jerk reaction watching it was that he didn't back himself as much as he did with Oakley. I think, if you look at his disposals, it was more swayed towards handball. So he's trying to set teams up where we know he can be so damaging with his kicking, how good he is fundamentally. So I'd love to see him back himself a little bit more. And Tom Burton as well, same thing, I guess, could be said in that he's been so good for the Western Jets. So hopefully he can translate that to the level. The one from Western Australia who I've got a big eye on, Mitch, is Cody Curtin. His 2 AFL Academy performances were below where he would have wanted them to be after starting the season so strongly over in Western Australia. Now, there is the qualifier to say that he was playing partially out of position, in that I think he spent a half of both games down in defence. But then so far in the 3 matches he's played for Western Australia, the first one he was reasonable. I thought Harry Moon, an unheralded Murray defender, did a pretty good job on him, and Cody Curtin just kicked the 3 3 goals. So it was sort of a split performance. And then the next 2 games, he's been a little bit quieter, obviously starved of opportunity against South Australia. Still did some good things as a relieving ruck, but then on the weekend, as we talked about, shut down by Jim Houston. So yeah, Cody Curtin, after showing a lot of promise last year in the National Championships, will be desperate for a big finish to, I guess, highlight what's been a pretty good start to his season, but it's mostly all been done at Waffle and Waffle under 18s level.
Yeah, that opener against Vic Country, a good game. Yeah. He's not going to kick 3 goals every week. We're not expecting him to kick 3 goals every week, but probably performance we want to see more of, and not a standout highlight performance from him. So it's going to be quite interesting. Obviously, that Richmond AFL Academy game, like he's on Noah Bolter.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is difficult, and that's why they want to throw him back. And then they throw him back for the start of the Coburg game, and it's quite difficult because the academy was actually up in that game, and then they throw him forward. He kicks a nice goal, but yeah, we just want to see a little bit more of that, and hopefully we get that this weekend when they host Vic Metro in Perth. So that's certainly one. And as we talked about the Vic Metro midfield, the WA midfield is going to be quite a challenge for them. When you've got Fred Rodriguez, Sam Swadling, if Farrow or Hudson Walker roll through there as well, they've got a lot of nice little moving pieces. Yeah,
Sam Swadling, I'd love to see him get some midfield time and really stamp his authority. He's done some really good things over in the Waffle Colts. Fred Rodriguez and Toby Wine would probably want to bounce back. I thought Toby Wine's first half was pretty good, but didn't get his hands on it as much as he would have liked to. And Fred Rodriguez just had a quieter game, which that's okay. That sort of happens. But yeah, he'd be desperate to bounce back as a leader, both in title and spiritually for that WA outfit.
Yeah, let's look into some weekend highlights from outside of those champs before we get into our club-by-club series. A double bottom ages debut makes the top of our weekend highlights.
Yeah, it does. 4 goals. He took 11 marks. 4 of those marks were contested. He was everywhere for the Western Jets. It was a little bit of Logan Morris 2.0 for them. A 195 centimetre key forward by the name of Jake Miller. He is Vic Metro's under-16s captain, so he'll have a big role to play for them when they go up to the Gold Coast next week. But yeah, making his coach leg debut, he was absolutely unbelievable. It wasn't just the fact that he kicked those 4 goals. It just felt like every time it was going to go into the Western Jets forward 50, he was the one that was on the end of it taking marks. There was a couple of score assists there as well, and a couple of other shots that didn't register a score. So he was absolutely everywhere. And it wasn't as though the Western Jets were running all over the Oakley Chargers. They were beaten comfortably in the midfield. So he's probably starved of opportunity a little bit. Could have been forgiven for sort of easing into Coates League footy as a result of that poor service he was getting. But he just made things happen and got up the ground and took some marks up the line as well. Unbelievable performance for a 16-year-old. Watch out if you're in the 2027 draft class and you're a key defender that has to play on him in the next couple of years.
That 2027 crop is looking pretty strong.
Yeah.
Like just with the quality that we're getting at that age, a couple years out is looking quite nice.
Yeah.
At this point. Couple of small forwards.
Yeah.
Got some bags, Lockie Doverston and Hassan Al-Ashkar.
Yeah.
Both performances ahead of Vic Metro's return that will certainly have them with some confidence.
Yeah, 6 goals for Hassan Al-Ashkar, and good to see him put it together and kick 6 goals straight, because we know he's been quite inaccurate this year, but at some point the pendulum was going to turn and he was going to get that accuracy. He's obviously got the opportunity for us in VFL as well, and yeah, we know how good he is in terms of creating those opportunities. Lockie Doverston, the 4 goals as well. Oscar Ainsworth at that game I was at, he was a big threat up front for the Western Jets as well, and was added to the Vic Metro squad ahead of the game, so that would have been a big confidence booster for him. He's averaged 6 shots on goal in the last 3 games and has been excellent as a 187 centimetre medium forward for them. So yeah, he may get an opportunity for Vic Metro this week, and yeah, his form certainly suggests he would have earned that call up. Yeah, really powerful and a really hard matchup, can get you in the air or on the ground.
A couple other little shout outs. Eastern Rangers, Sullivan Roby's been solid in just 2 games, also balancing that with school footy in quite a small period. So to back up school footy and then the Coates Talent League can have an impact, going at about 15 disposals, 2 goals, and a few tackles and marks in there as well. And then Falcons bottom manager Jack Pickett has played, I think, 3 games now, total of 9 goals, 4 on the weekend. So that's a nice little package he's setting up for a bottom age year in the Coates Talent League. So yeah, there's plenty, and we've got some under 16s action coming up as well over the next couple of weeks up in Queensland, as you mentioned. Sydney and GWS played, their academies played over the weekend as well. So plenty happening at this point of the year. Now let's chat the Gold Coast Suns as part of our AFL club by club series, because the Suns are always the most fascinating one. They play with a different currency to other clubs when it comes to the draft, just given the usual strength in their academy stocks. The big plus for them this year is this could be their best haul of academy prospects ever, even though they had 4 first-round picks a couple years ago. Leo Lombard, a top 10 pick last year. Well documented, the prospects that they are set to have access to, but we should actually just talk about who they are and what they're actually going to get in those prospects. So as far as the draft points thing, the Suns look pretty fine, as they are every year. They pull in future first-round picks, and then this year they've got 3 of them. They've got close to 4,000 draft points. They'll still have to be a little bit active in a trade space, but they'll be trading those first-round picks out for later picks. So despite the changes to the draft bidding system, I think they're going to be fine, unless for some reason clubs aren't keen on taking a first-round pick for a heap of later picks. It might be quite fascinating if that's the case. But let's go through maybe the top line of their academy for 2025. So Zeke Uland, Dill Patterson, Bo Adenshaw, Kobe Coulson, probably that top bracket. Do you want to kind of go over the type of players they're getting in those 4?
So Zeke Uland hasn't played this year, likely to go get a bit in the top 5. That connecting half forward, really powerful, provides a lot of X factor. So I think in Zeke Uland and Dylan Patterson, they get 2 players alongside Bailey Humphrey who have that real X factor, and you don't want, if you're an opponent, you don't want the ball in their hand forward of center, because they've got the ability to cause real headaches, and they're really difficult matchups as well. Dylan Patterson, where he plays at the next level, he could play anywhere because he has got that X factor that we've talked about. Obviously, his run, his dash, his dare, his kicking, his creativity is a great package for them to have. But his kicking in particular, he sets the game up really well. Probably starts as a halfback, but it might be a case of how they can fit him into the lineup, because he does have that X factor and flair. He's someone you'd want at AFL level. Bo Adenshaw and Kobe Coulson, both midfielders at under 18s level. I think both start as small forwards. Kobe Coulson's pressure is really good, and the fact that, and as is Bo Adenshaw, he works really hard too. The positive of both Adenshaw and Coulson is that, like we say, they'll start as small forwards, and if there's a little chink in Gold Coast's armour, I reckon it would be those smalls at ground level, and we know how important they are in the modern game. So I think they eventually graduate into the midfield, but in the next couple of years, Gold Coast look to be pushing into premiership contention. Maybe one or both of them come in and can play that role. It's going to be quite fascinating. Like there isn't a standout list need. Like maybe that small forward, and they can use Leo Lombard, they can use Jake Rogers when they're not being required in midfield. So they've got depth everywhere. It's going to be quite fantastic for them and how it all unfolds. Obviously, Uland being sidelined, unfortunate, but it's really just going to help Gold Coast with really the only change would be that it's pushing a bid back further. Obviously, you mentioned earlier, Bo Adenshaw out with a hamstring injury for the rest of the champs. He might play a bit more footy in the back end of the year, but he's kind of been a first round prospect. Dill Patterson, top 10, 4th in your rankings for this month. And Kobe Coulson, the big riser, so he's another potential first-round option for them. And while they did have 4 first-rounders a couple years ago, and they could have another 4 this year, it's that next line of academy talent. Like they could be coming away with a good amount of club-tied teenagers, and it's certainly going to be quite promising for them. So who is in that next line? We know Max Hudson, Cooper Collins, Grady Turner, Jonah Harris. There's been a fair few that have put on the socks for the Allies, and they've all had some nice glimpses. So Cooper Collins is that forward option, really hard work and quite a physical and combative player as well. Max Hudson, I think, if anything, he's the one that maybe fits the list need just because he's got that versatility, can play at either end, can lock down really well as a small medium type, but also as that third tall up forward, he's kicked some bags of goals. Then they've got Jonah Harris as a forward ruck option. If Ned Moyle leaves for more opportunities, maybe he's added just for a little bit of list depth. And Grady Turner as a key defender is one that could attract a bid, given, like we say, as with Caleb Nankaro, both of them having shown some promise in a class that doesn't have too many key defenders. So, they're the players. And like you said, Kalani White as a swingman is unlikely to choose Gold Coast with his ties to Melbourne via the father-son. I think he favours Melbourne. Some suggestion that he'll go down that route. And obviously on top of that, training and playing with Melbourne and Casey respectively certainly helps that case as well. So there's a little bit there that's working in that favour for the Demons. So, but to be fair, for Gold Coast, you can still be pretty happy with the other names that you'll likely get at the end of this year. GWS, like we have when speaking about Gold Coast, they kind of also have a different draft strategy, or are forced to have a different draft strategy. We heard Jason McCartney a couple of years ago around the selection of Aaron Cadman about, he probably wouldn't have been taken number 1 by a lot of other clubs, but because of the type of player he is, where he comes from,
how he's a better fit for the club and how they needed to make sure they got him in over other top rated prospects in that draft class. So they, it's often a Vic Country kids, club, those interstate options that aren't tied to the go home factor as much because it's not this big city option for them, and they might not miss it as much. So there's certainly a different view for GWS and how they go about the draft. Now they're drafting at the moment 10, 28, 34, so just 3 picks, but over 2,100 points. So it's a good position for them. They've got some academy consideration this year, but that first round pick again will be quite an interesting one for them after they had 2 or 3 last year and came away with a nice draft haul. Yeah,
they did. And yeah, like you said, I think the fact that they do look for Vic Country players because they've had so many players leave over the journey, part of that is because they got such a bevy of talent early in their existence. It means that they're getting players with high ceilings. So players who haven't necessarily had access to, 3 times a week training together and that sort of thing. So we often see players that go to GWS then improve a lot more quickly than what some of their counterparts do. Aaron Cadman, probably the outlier, but he's obviously a key position talent. Yeah, you talk about lack of academy talent. They probably would want a key defender to come, and Jim Houston, as we talked about, it's just the one game at this point against Cody Curtin, but certainly showed that he's got some attributes, so he might be one they look to pick up later on. The one I want to put on the map just to add to their midfield depth as that first round option they could look at, I think, is Sam Cumming.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he's one who we know he's clearly got that independence. Had a chat to him earlier in the year, boarding in South Australia. He's always wanted to go to boarding school. And he's from Wentworth, which is just over the river from Mildura. So he's actually a New South Wales kid. But the reason he wanted to go to boarding school was because his older mate, Jack Au, went to boarding school and it was so beneficial for him.
Yeah.
And those two being so tight, obviously Jack Au is vying for a debut at GWS at the moment. That might be a nice little symmetrical reason for them to want to get Sam Cumming. Obviously, those two mates being reunited, but regardless, Sam Cumming is someone that is pushing his case to be a really good prospect and would fit their needs well as that sort of powerful midfielder forward option.
I love that call. That's really good because they bring in Jake Stringer this year. He's not a long-term option for them. It's a win now window, and Cumming can certainly play that forward midfield hybrid option. Yeah, I had key defenders as a big list need for them.
Yeah.
Like, they've probably got the best key defensive partnership in Sam Taylor and Jack Buckley. But what's below that if they lose Leclerc?
Cooper Bell,
and then they've got, you look at outside of that, like Max Krasuski's future's a bit up in the air, as is Wade Dirksen. So they probably need to be addressing that a little bit this year. Obviously, they'll go through the trade and free agency period first. But if Houston can keep building that form, that he could be an answer for them for the long term.
Yep.
And then I think midfield depth is another one for them. Like, have got such a good midfield, and they do have a few coming through after last year's draft. But I think just keeping that going, as they have had to do for 15 years now, is probably another focus for them.
The only other player I'll put on the radar is Tom Burton. A couple of reasons for that. I just think his run and gun style is really suited to the way GWS like to play, but also you do need a certain character, as you said, to go to a non-footy town. And I feel like, having had a chat to him and written a story on him, he'd be someone that would thrive on having that balance and not being all consumed by footy, going to a 2-team town in South Australia or Western Australia or the Melbourne footy bubble. So that would be another player I'd put on the map, but still plenty to play out. So we'll see how it goes.
Perfect. Well, there you go. Wrap up for GWS. We had Gold Coast earlier in the series as well. What else we got coming up outside of the champs this weekend?
Yeah, we've got some Coates League footy on the horizon, and we've got the under 16s are going to head up to the Gold Coast very, very soon. We know that there's always plenty of interest in that. So we'll cover that once that is over. So keep an eye on our channels for that. Keep an eye on Zero Hanger for all AFL related content as well. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Craft to the Draft. We hope you enjoy it.